Hey guys, Dan here with today's quarantine video. We've been doing this every weekend for the past few weeks with the new movies on demand for the week, because of course everybody's looking for things to watch while they're cooped up at home. So we have 4 new ones to talk about, a few major ones, and like I did last week with Vivarium, I'm going to try and seek out at least one every week that I really hadn't heard of, and expose myself to something that maybe I wouldn't have known about or sought out if it weren't for the shutdown. So I do that this week with a movie called Clemency, starring Alfre Woodard. But first, we got to talk about Trolls World Tour. This is the biggie for the week. Universal was making a big push for this movie originally. It was supposed to be out in theaters April 10th. Huge deal, big sequel to a surprisingly successful first film. And pretty much right as the theaters were getting shut down, or maybe even before the theaters got shut down, Universal was like, you know what? Instead of moving this movie to another date like a lot of studios are doing, we're just going to stream this directly to your house. It'll be $20 to rent for 48 hours, and there you go. You can watch Trolls. Now, the $20 price tag for me makes a lot more sense for this movie than it did for The Invisible Man and The Hunt and the other Universal movies, because unless you're like me and reviewing it here for a podcast, you're going to be watching Trolls with your kids, with your family. So that costs $40, $50, $60 at the movie theater. So to watch it for a couple days at home. I mean, kids, if they like something, they'll watch it over again. So they'll probably watch it 2 or 3 times, some of these kids, in a 48-hour period. So the $20 price tag is not too bad. But how good is the movie? Let's talk about that. So the main plot of the movie is we learn that not only are there the regular trolls that we knew from the last movie, which are known as pop trolls, but there's trolls of all different genres of music: rock trolls, techno trolls, country trolls, etc. And so Queen Barb is the leader of the rock trolls, and we learn from a narrative given to us by Poppy's father. Poppy and Branch, of course, return. By the way, Poppy is Anna Kendrick, and Branch is voiced by Justin Timberlake. We learn from a story of his that a long time ago, all the trolls were one, but slowly they had to split the magical strings into each tribe, because they had a big, blowout about which music was the best. So they all kind of went their separate ways, and then largely didn't even know the other trolls existed until now. Queen Barb of the rock trolls, figured it out, and so she's trying to collect all the strings to play the greatest power chord of all time, and then from that point on, theoretically, trolls will only know rock music and nothing else. So this is, of course, a big deal to Poppy, so she sets out with Branch and a couple of the other trolls to figure out how to stop Barb from her plan. So if you saw the first one, you pretty much know the look and the style of this, and that it's going to be, what they call a jukebox musical. It's going to be, song after song, and, a lot of medleys and stuff like that. I had mixed feelings about that in this movie, more so than the first movie. And part of me is not sure if that's because I've been in quarantine mode now for about a month, and seeing something that is this, vibrant and acid trippy and almost headache-inducing was a little too much for me. I'm not sure. But I actually really liked the first Trolls movie. I forget what exact grade I gave it when we were doing the old Film Fanatic show, but it was somewhere in like the B range. I thought it was a pretty good movie, surprisingly so, maybe even a B+. And, I thought the songs were good. I thought the storyline was solid, getting to know these different characters. And then they had a side story with Zooey Deschanel and Christopher Mintz-Plasse as like a king and queen, or maybe they were a prince. He was a prince. That's what it was. He was a prince, and she was like an ogre kind of woman. But anyway, like that was cool. I liked everything going on there. This one is for me a step down, maybe even a couple of steps down. the the whole, you know, color scheme and the in your face songs and glitter and happiness, and you know, and there's nothing wrong with happiness. You know, there's definitely been some things I've been watching to specifically make me happy, but this seemed just so in your face, and you know, contrary to everything that kind of I've been watching. And I think that is something that kind of set Trolls apart the first time around, is that sort of, you know, all the colors are super vibrant, and you know, it makes sense they were going to release it Easter weekend, because it's, you know, it's very like Easter eggy with the rainbow of colors and all the cheer and everything. But one of the things that stuck out to me right away was we do like a quick synopsis of the first movie, and we even talk about how Branch found his true colors, and then, you know, which of course they had that very, very beautiful Cyndi Lauper True Colors song in the first movie. I was crying. That is not a lie. But this one starts out with girls just want to have fun. So right away I'm like, okay, we already went to the Cyndi Lauper well, and you just reminded me you went to the Cyndi Lauper well in the first movie. So I'm so, you know, is this movie sponsored by Cyndi Lauper or something? Like, what's going on? So that was kind of weird that was the very first song. That turned into kind of a medley anyway. But okay, so I'll get to the positives in a second. Let's talk about why it's a step down, other than all the stuff I just mentioned. I think the world building is interesting, but it's kind of obvious and not really that inventive. It's like, okay, each genre of music gets their own place. Like, the plot was okay with the different strings, but like the world building itself was very sort of on the nose, a bit cliche. It took the most basic and judgmental, really, elements of each of the categories of music, and just really, you know, puts it out on the screen. And also, in some aspects, I'm not even quite sure the world makes sense, but you know, sometimes you got to just sort of suspend that in a kid's movie. But I felt that they tripped over their own narrative a couple of times in that regard. I also can't really get behind the whole rock being the villain thing, and then, I mean, this is sort of a spoiler, I guess, but you don't really know what happens or how it happens, but the hip-hop world ends up saving the day, and as a rock fan, that just kind of pissed me off. Like, you know, the pop trolls are, everything's cheery and everything's bubblegum, and they even do like a medley, and it's got Who Let the Dogs Out and Spice Girls and Gangnam Style and all that stuff, and, you know, that's fine. Like, I like pop music, I like all genres of music, but to have rock be the villain and then rap comes in and saves the day, I was just like, okay, F this movie, you know, like, that's not cool. They don't also really do much with this side storyline of Branch's unrequited love for Poppy. I mean, I guess there's two schools of thought. It could have been overdone and really generic if they had really followed through on it. So maybe I wouldn't have liked it if they followed through on it, but then don't bring it up at all. Like, it doesn't... not every story, not every movie has to have a love story. You know, this could just be about saving the world from the rock people, the rock trolls. You know, so either do something with the love story or don't do it at all. The song at the end is okay, but it is nowhere near as good as Can't Stop the Feeling from the first movie. That Justin Timberlake song ranks among probably his top three, and I would include NSYNC songs on that list too. I mean, Can't Stop the Feeling is such a great, infectious song, and the one at the end here is okay. So that is definitely a criticism. But all of that being said, I didn't hate the movie. It's just a big step down from the first one. And here's why I didn't hate it. The messages about individuality and not everybody has to be the same to, you know, get along or to be in a group together. I think that message was great and good for kids to see, especially, you know, in the Trump era and during the shutdown and stuff when people are, you know, maybe criticizing other cultures or other countries. You know, I think it's that's a great message for kids. And then the other thing that I liked, sort of going along with that theory, is that we learn about 3/4 of the way through the movie that maybe what Poppy's dad told her wasn't how it actually happened. And so it kind of opens her eyes to, like, oh, so there's like different sides to the same story. I think that's a good message for kids too, that maybe everything you hear from, say, I don't know, your parents, I guess, is a bad example, but I mean, that's who they're mostly with right now. But it's like, there's always maybe another side that you haven't heard yet, and a different, I guess, not even different sides, but that everybody sort of has a different perception of the same incident. So I think that's a good message too. And then there's some good voice work as well here. There's some people I didn't even recognize. Sam Rockwell is in it. Kelly Clarkson is in it. I didn't recognize either of those people. You've got horrible James Corden yet again. He always has to sing his way into everything, and every time his character was on, I was annoyed. But they also do something with one of the cool characters from last time, who finds out he is a hip-hop troll. Not to give too much away. But so I liked this movie an okay amount. Is it worth $20 to rent? Not to me, I guess, but, if you've got kids that are cooped up at home, that are dying to watch something new, you've already seen Onward 5 times, I suppose it's not the worst, but this day and age, there's so much out there for kids that I don't think I can really say, like, yes, you should definitely plunk $20 down for this, for a rental. Kids will certainly like it more than I did, because I don't think they'll really think that much into it. They'll just listen to the tunes and be like, okay, great, let's dance along. So for that purpose, I will give it a mildly passing grade with a C+. But as a movie a movie versus movie thing, the first Trolls is so much better on a technical level in many, many, many ways. The themes are better here in terms of, learning from them and that kind of thing. I would say the themes, but I don't know, don't judge a book by its cover. Like the first one had pretty good themes too. They were a little more basic maybe, but these themes are more pressing. The whole Rock thing, like Rock being the villain, just really made me angry. But I don't want to be personally biased against the movie because of that, but I did think that was kind of a cheap shot. So I don't know. C+, I guess, because kids will love this movie. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And I think parents will think it's okay. I think parents will like the music in it. And I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt, I think, because of with the flashiness and stuff. I think just because, hey, look, I've been cooped up for like a month, and this is certainly the most cheery thing I've seen since then. So I'm trying to maybe give it a little bit of benefit of the doubt for that. By the end of the year, I would not be surprised if my grade was lower, but for now, I'll leave it with a C+. You could do worse, I suppose, while you're stuck at home. So up next, we're going to talk about Call of the Wild. Now, this one did get a nice small run in theaters before the shutdown. It was in theaters for about 3 weeks, I guess. It came out, February 21st, so about 3 weeks or so before all the theaters got shut down. So it got a little bit of theater love, but you can rent it now at all your normal on-demand places for $5.99, or you can buy it for $15, $14.99. So that's not bad. You can keep it for just $15, which is less than to rent the Trolls movie. But if you want to wait for the DVD, it will be out in about a month, May 12th. It will see DVD and Blu-ray release. This is, of course, another adaptation of the Jack London story. We've had many of these since the 1903 book was published, and many famous ones as well. But this is going to go down probably as one of the most famous because, of course, everybody loves Harrison Ford. He is the acting star in it. And this is a little fun fact about this movie. So one of the old movie versions from 1935 was the last movie released under the 20th Century Pictures banner before Fox bought it, and then it became 20th Century Fox. This version of Call of the Wild is the first film released by the newly named 20th Century Studios, now that Disney has bought them. So, it's a little interesting trivia piece of kismet there with that. But essentially, if you know the book at all, this deviates a bit from the book because some of the human characters are more involved, and we get a little bit more of a backstory. Well, the book really didn't give us any backstory on Buck the dog. Here we get a good bit of his history and stuff. And there's a judge that's like only named in the book, but here he has a little bit of a role. It's Bradley Whitford. So there's definitely some differences. And the book was also more grisly because it was a book and people didn't care in 1903 what their kids were reading, I guess. We had like kids going to all the gangster pictures and all that stuff in the 20s and 30s. So this is a PG movie, so everything gets kind of tamped down violence-wise. However, I will say, I'm always looking for new ideas for quarantine videos since I'm trying to do a video every day. I'm going to do a video, I think on Monday, taking a look at the ratings system because I was so annoyed that this movie gets the same rating, a PG, as Trolls World Tour. Trolls World Tour had like nothing that would make it a PG movie. Not even like risque humor that like the Shrek movies have. Nothing. It should be rated G, but So I'm going to get into a whole thing about the rating system coming up because this has gun violence and dogs in peril and alcoholism and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, how is this the same rating as Trolls? But anyway, how is it as a movie is the real question. So it takes place in the late 19th century during the Gold Rush, and Buck is a dog that has had some issues. The judge is his owner in the first couple scenes here, but he is abducted and shipped off to the Yukon. So Harrison Ford plays a gold miner who hears about everything and wants to head out west and see the world. He plays John Thornton, and Omar Sy is featured as well from a great movie called The Untouchables, and essentially he befriends Buck because Buck is about to actually be murdered at one point. Real PG stuff here, at gunpoint. But Jack steps in, or John rather, steps in and saves the day, and then him and Buck sort of become cohorts in panning for the gold. So, I remember reading the book as a high schooler. I had to sort of refresh my memory of exactly like what went down in the book. But I remembered really liking Jack London stories. I forget the name of the one where the man is in the woods by himself and he basically freezes to death. I forget what the name of that one was, but that story has always stuck with me. And we saw the movie version too in school, and that always stuck with me. We never saw any of the Call of the Wild movies though, but I do remember reading the book in probably 9th grade, maybe 10th, and really liking it. I like the way Jack London writes stories about realistic things and realistic weather and scenery and that kind of stuff, that it was very visual. You could always really picture it. So his books kind of lend themselves to be made into movies. But the main problem with this, and maybe the only real problem with it, but it is a gaping one, and maybe you've heard in other reviews of it or you've seen stories about it, but every single dog in this movie is CGI. And they don't look all that great. It was so distracting the entire movie. Harrison Ford did a good job. It's one of those performances of his where sometimes it requires him to be subtle, and sometimes it requires him to be the loud, yelling Harrison Ford. And he pulls both of those off. But the entire movie, I'm constantly just thinking to myself, God, Harrison Ford's literally acting with a CGI motion capture person pretending to be a dog right now. what must this shoot have been like? Like, every scene I was thinking that. Especially there's a scene where they're actually panning for gold in like a riverbed, and Buck is wet, and it's like super obvious at that point. Like, I don't know. It's once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's so obvious right from the start that this is a completely CGI dog that it was just distracting the entire movie. It's all in the eyes, you know. But then also, it's not all in the eyes, because sometimes it's also in the fur. Like, the fur looks okay, but it didn't breathe, you know. Like dogs breathe in a certain way, you know, and this CGI did not reflect that. I don't know why sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. You know, it's funny that Disney owns Fox now, and this is the first film they've released under this new banner through Fox, because when I think of like the Lion King remake or the Jungle Book remake, I mean, I didn't really like the Lion King movie, but the visuals were spot on. I mean, everything looked so natural and so great and so cool. And Jungle Book, they were even involving real people, because you had the little boy, you know, and that was great too. Did they spend a lot more money than this movie did? I mean, this movie has a pretty decent budget, so I guess they probably did, because they're Disney. They probably spent $50 million more, but like, I don't know. I think this movie could have gotten away with doing it both ways, having some live dogs for certain shots and CGI dogs for the others. Like, for example, you know, the villain, like, at one point kind of, like, throws the dog down and, like, kicks him. Okay, fine. You use a CGI dog for that, and then you don't do close-ups. You know, it's easy to get away with that. But, like, we've seen so many dog movies recently with real live dogs. You know, The Art of Racing in the Rain, A Dog's Journey, A Dog's Purpose. And I know Dog's Purpose had that dust-up with... you know, the underwater scene when there was video that surfaced that the dog didn't want to do the stunt and they, like, made him. Okay, obviously that was bad PR. But there's a good way to go about it. You know, the Humane Society is supposed to be on every set with an animal just to make sure all the animal things are being done right. I think they could have done this in a different way, and they chose not to, I guess, to be PC, but I'm sorry, it just didn't work. And it was so distracting that it essentially, I don't want to say it ruined the movie, because it's not like I'm failing the movie, but it's hard to get past that when it's all you can think about. Every single scene where you see the dog, you're just like, fake, 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 fake. And then, like, scenes with multiple dogs, you know, you're just like, wow, like, the dogs were just sitting at one point, listening to, you know, somebody talk, and you're just like, they couldn't have used real dogs for this? Like, it was such a distraction, and a really bad judgment call, I think, from the studio, because it just distracted me the entire movie. Was the movie interesting? Yeah, I guess. You know, it was kind of basic, but I like that they expanded upon what the book did. So in that instance, okay, sure. You know, did Harrison Ford do a good job acting along a CGI dog? Yeah, he really did. But when you're so distracted every step of the way, it's just hard to get you know, involve yourself, and hard to get lost, is what I mean to say, in the movie. So I leave Call of the Wild with a C. I hate to do it, but you know, it's a bummer, you know, because it could have been so much better. So next is Like a Boss. Now, this is one I actually saw a couple of months ago in theaters, but it is new on demand, so figured we would do that this week. And then here's another one, just like some of these other movies that we've seen lately. You can buy it on demand for a $14.99 download, and then this will be on DVD in just a couple weeks. April 21st, I believe, is the release date for that. So it'll be on Blu-ray or DVD then, but in the meantime, you can check it out on demand. And I don't think this was, like, moved up at all for Corona. I mean, it was basically done its theater run. I do a second run theater, and I think we didn't even have it by the time all the theaters were shut down. So I don't think this was moved up in the line at all for release, but you can get it now if you missed it the first time around. So it stars Tiffany Haddish and Rose Byrne as two, lifelong best friends. Very different, though. They play Mel and Mia. Mia is more practical and inventive and business-minded, and Mel wants to just earn her fortune very quickly and, caution to the wind kind of thing. And what's funny is this is... So Mel is Rose Byrne's character, the one who wants to earn her fortune quickly, and Mia is the more practical-minded. And you would think with Tiffany Haddish and Rose Byrne that they would have been reversed. So I like, right away, I like that they sort of flipped the script on its ear there and didn't give them the personalities that you figured they would have. But basically, they run this nice boutique. I was going to say beauty salon, but that's not really what it is, so I was going to say boutique, so I said boutique. But that's not what it is. It's a boutique. And basically they sell perfumes and sort of lifestyle type stuff for women. And they are in deep, deep debt, but they have this really cool idea that gets word to Claire Luna, who is played by Salma Hayek, and she is basically, this huge cosmetics mogul in the world, and she ends up obtaining a controlling stake in Mel and Mia's company, and then sort of goes head-to-head with them because they all have different ideas about how things should run. And essentially, she is trying to break them up as a team because then she gains full control over their company as per their contract. This is a comedy, as you might have imagined, and Billy Porter and Jennifer Coolidge play their business associates at the shop, and then a few people that you might also recognize are in the movie. Lisa Kudrow shows up towards the end there. Ari Grainer, Jessica St. Clair are Mel and Mia's friends. This movie had an interesting premise. I mean, it's been done before, certainly, the whole best friends in business thing and falling outs. But I do like the way that they did not typecast the two leads. I liked that a lot. And they have great chemistry. They work well together, and you really do believe, okay, these guys have been friends for a long time. They've got a great back and forth. And you also believe that Salma Hayek is the ball-busting woman in charge, of her own business empire. We've seen her sort of play that role before. So the main question of a movie like this is it funny? And I think it was sometimes. I think there were long stretches where it wasn't, which is kind of a bummer. But it's got a very brisk running time. It comes in below 90 minutes. I think, was it 88 minutes? 83 minutes, not even. So it's an hour and 23 minutes, which to me usually signifies in a comedy that the premise was too thin and they didn't have enough to pad it out. Some recent examples of that include the movie Jexy with Adam Devine. That was around the same time, that was 81 minutes or something. It was all right, well, yeah, it's a one-note joke movie. I think they could have taken this in a number of different directions or had side plots going with some of the characters. Might that have made it too long and too uninteresting? I'm not sure. Kind of like with Trolls. I mean, they could have, with the love story in Trolls, it's hard to say whether it would have benefited from them lengthening that plot line or not, depending on how it was pulled off, But I think even the side characters in this movie don't get enough time to shine, and they also don't, they're very cookie cutter. We don't learn much about them, and not that I'm saying we need to see their home lives and all this stuff, but I think we could have used a little more. They could have fleshed it out a bit more to go to a full 90 minutes if they had the right jokes. And here I'm not quite sure if they did, because what was already on the screen was only funny sporadically. But I did certainly laugh. I like Tiffany Haddish a lot. I just reviewed the new Netflix miniseries Self-Made, where she co-stars with Octavia Spencer, and I really didn't like her in that. I'm not sure yet how I feel about her in dramatic roles. Rose Byrne, we've seen, can do pretty much any type of role. We've seen her in thrillers, dramas, comedies, kids movies, doing accents, whatever. And she pretty much always brings her A game. But and here she's very good too. But and I like Tiffany Haddish in this because where she shines is broad comedy. She was by far the best part of the movie Night School with Kevin Hart. She obviously rose to fame very quickly with her star turn in Girls Trip. So she's definitely bringing the funny here when she's able to. The problem is sometimes she's not able to because the script lets her down. And same thing with Rose Byrne. But that being said, there are funny moments in here. The chemistry between the two leads is great. I think more could have been fleshed out. But, for an 83-minute comedy, I think it gets enough of the job done. So I leave Like a Boss with a C+. A lot of very middling grades today for me. So finally, we're going to talk about Clemency. This is a film that actually came out at the tail end of last year, December 27th. It was released in a hot 2 theaters, presumably New York and LA, to get Oscar contention or what have you, and it didn't get any nominations or any love from the Oscars. However, it was pretty well received, critically, and from a lot of African American acting awards. So, for example, the Black Reel Awards, it got many nominations. The NAACP Image Awards, it got some nominations. So, this was on people's radars, just not the Academies. But that's what they do. You have to release it in a couple of theaters before the end of the year. So I count this, though, as a 2020 movie because it wasn't released wide until June 21st. And even then, at its peak, it was only in about 100 theaters. So, but now that it's on DVD and on demand, a lot more people will get to see it. And this is at the same price point as Call of the Wild. You could rent it for $5.99, or you could buy the download for $14.99, or it is available on DVD and Blu-ray right now. So this is about Alfre Woodard. She stars in it as Bernadine. I'm sorry, I combined them. Bernadine Williams, and she is a warden at a death row prison. And the movie is essentially about one main prisoner named Anthony Woods, played by Aldous Hodge, who I know from Hidden Figures, but he's been in a few different things. I think he was in Straight Outta Compton as well. But basically, half of the story takes place at the prison with him and his lawyer, played by Richard Schiff, who I always love. He is one of the old West Wing people, but he also plays the head of the hospital, I think, on The Good Doctor. There's a guy who does not get enough love from the industry. He's one of those, like, hey, I know that guy kind of guys. But, he always brings it. And he's great here as the lawyer who is basically just defeated by this warden. There's a big move basically to free this kid because, a lot of people think he didn't do it, but Alfre Woodard, as the warden, is following the letter of the law, so she's got to put him to death anyway. And essentially, the other half of the story takes place at home with her and her husband, who is played by Wendell Pierce from The Wire, and how her job is affecting her psychological nature and affecting their marriage and all of this stuff. And then about halfway through the movie, we also uncover something about this particular inmate that hits even harder for Alfre Woodard's warden. So this movie is really good. The acting here is so solid. My buddy Joe, who comes on my channel from time to time, and used to do Film Fanatics with us, he likes to call people the discount so-and-so. Like, oh, that guy's discount George Clooney. Or, basically if they mildly look alike and their acting is not up to par, they are the discount whoever. And I often think of Alfre Woodard as the discount Viola Davis. She's similar looking, they're similar ages, and she gets a lot of really good roles, but she's no Viola Davis, right? You know, Viola Davis is in Fences and, you know, all these really, you know, prestige pictures and everything. Alfre Woodard, well, she shows up in season 2 of Desperate Housewives, and she's got her son locked in the basement. You know, she's more of, you know, a B-lister or C-lister even, whereas Viola Davis is right up top. But I'll tell you what, this might be Alfre Woodard's best performance. Now, granted, I haven't seen her in everything. In fact, I probably haven't seen many of her movies, but she's been nominated for awards. But you know, she was. Let's see what she. Oh yes, Hill Street Blues. That's where she won her first Emmy. But yeah, I mean, she's been in a lot of movies that I have not seen. Primal Fear is a popular one. She's been in a few Spike Lee movies. But, you know, she gets sort of the short shrift with a lot of this stuff. You know, like 12 Years a Slave, okay, she was great in that movie, but, you know, everybody talks about Lupita Nyong'o, of course. So here she is front and center, and when it first started, I really was thinking, like, wow, this is actually like Viola Davis quality acting, and it did not diminish. You know, this whole performance was so great, such a powerhouse. This is not an easy movie to watch, though. It's one of these movies where you really can lose yourself and immerse yourself in what these characters are thinking, and it takes a toll if you can, because it's sort of, you know, it's an interesting look at things, because a lot of prison movies are mostly from the standpoint of the prisoner, and like, oh, what's their life like, and oh, you know, they did it or they didn't do it or whatever. And there was some of that here, especially, you know, with all the protests going on about this character. But I would say the main part of this movie is her and her mindset, and you know, everybody thinks like, oh, that, you know, the warden's such a d-bag or such a whatever, and that's not helped necessarily by people like Orange is the New Black, you know, the characters in that who are all kind of horrible except for maybe one or two. But realistically, I think for the most part, wardens and prison guards and stuff are a lot like this character. They, you know, have real emotions, and doing this job day in and day out and having to be so reserved and such a hard ass when maybe you don't want to be, takes a psychological toll, I'm sure. And not many movies have really showcased that aspect of it, and so I loved that. I think the only real negative I have about this movie is that the stuff at home, like her and Wendell Pierce, there's a couple of good scenes between them, but I'm not sure if they necessarily delve into that as much as they can. Sort of a recurring theme, I guess, with these movies is that, you know, there's certain threads that are just not explored enough. But it's a minor nitpick, because the movie is really, really solid. I'm glad I sought it out. It is interesting that the two movies that I've sought out to sort of get something off the beaten path, they both sort of have a lot of relevance in the coronavirus times, because last week we had Vivarium, whatever, where you can't leave your house and they're stuck there and it's very like Twilight Zone-y. And here, you know, we see this prison, death row, you know, prisoner who maybe is even innocent. I mean, by the end of the movie, I believed he was innocent. You know, he's a made-up character, so I'm not sure what the writers and directors wanted us to think, but I felt that he probably was innocent at the end, and I think that's a big struggle that the warden has in the first place. But you know, looking at this movie in the COVID-19 era is just like, wow, you know, we all kind of feel like prisoners in our homes, but this dude is really a prisoner, you know? I mean, at one point he tries to kill himself in his cell by banging his head against the bricks and shouting, "I decide when I die, I decide when I die." I mean, woohoo, what a scene. I thought this was a great movie. Definitely one of the best of the year for me so far. You know, my issue with the home life is a nitpick, because I wanted something to say negative about it, because it's not a perfect film, but it is a damn good piece of cinema for sure. It's an A for me on Clemency. Check it out for sure. Those other ones, maybe, you know, and they all were kind of in that C plus range, but Clemency for me is the week's pick for sure. So that is going to do it for this week's show. I've been working hard here to try and get you a video every single day on my YouTube channel. I am having some issues uploading. Some of these videos take like 12 hours, 15 hours to upload, so by the time it uploads, it's actually the next day, but I am trying for you. And like I said, Monday I'm going to have sort of more of an opinion piece about the MPAA ratings system as opposed to an actual review video. And then tomorrow for Easter, I think I'm just going to check in and say hello and, you know, let y'all know how I'm doing emotionally with all the COVID-19 stuff. So that'll be a quick one tomorrow. But thank you so much for watching, and next Saturday we'll do it all again, probably 4 more movies. I'm trying to think of what new ones have come out lately that were either in theaters. I know there's some horror movies that have either come out already or about to, like the new version of The Grudge, I think is already out. The Turning. Yeah, I'm trying to think. You know, we're getting to sort of a drought here because now that there's no new movies released in theaters, the ones coming out on DVD are getting harder to come by, I suppose. But we'll find movies for you for sure. And then Tuesday I'll have the Connors review. Wednesday will be the Masked Singer guesses, and then my TV reviews on Thursday or Friday. So packed week again. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Bye.